Hey everyone, good afternoon. Oh, good. All right, let's make sure you guys see my screen. Awesome. Okay, there we go. I am Sydney, founder of Nixcode. So this is where I took my first coding classes. And I ended up working in the utility at Consumers Energy in Jackson, Michigan. And this is where I got the assignment to help the Department of Environmental to sort the regulations and create compliance and quality assurance around regulation changes and SOPs. And that is how I began getting excited about development. And I started to apply this to my own business ventures. I was a blogger, and I was doing the influencer thing before influencers became a thing. It was like Lucky Magazine and product reviews. This is where YouTube was the home for influencing. And I had a website and blogging, and believe it or not, no one was like, yes, Sydney, you make great content. They were like, how did you get your website to do this? And how did you get your tech to show up like this? And this is where I realized people were really interested in how they could do the same thing. So this is where I began freelance developing. Now, as a freelance developer, it was cool. So I was coding, doing some things, building custom solutions, but I immediately became the lifeline to people's projects. So it was like, well, you gonna maintain it for me? What if I got changes? And of course, having to always negotiate rates, because truly the amount of time we take to develop just creates a financial barrier. So this is where I started exploring no-code through my first app company, which was called Hype Digital Innovation. And this is where I started to actually take the work that I was doing, because I was repeating a lot of the same things over and over. Everybody needs profiles, they want chats, things like that. So instead of developing it multiple times, I decided to develop it once and allow the person on a no-code end to customize the settings they want and set it up how they need to, and I can just get paid multiple times for the work I did one time. And so that's where I realized as a developer, there was opportunity as a no-code platform and no-code developer. By doing this for a few years, I really validated where the gaps were in no-code by learning all these softwares, all these tools, and then I soon realized there's still a gap here around no-code, and we're gonna talk more about that, because just because there's no coding involved does not make it easy. Doesn't mean anyone can do it. And that led me to build what I have today, which is called Nixcode. It's a no-code app software that uses AI to help you build, manage, and increase the performance of your apps. So that's how I became a SaaS founder. So I want to learn a little about you. So who in here is actually a developer? Means you code or you know code, but you develop. Okay, cool. So who's here a founder building their own product themselves? Okay, a few of those too. And then anyone here is just curious, like you're considering maybe careers change, anybody? Okay, well, okay. Good, well, good to know about you. I like to take this in terms of how we're gonna talk and use examples that hopefully you can take into your next endeavor. So we're gonna talk about the little history of no code and low code and how we even got to where we are today, because it is not a new thing. It has been around a long time ago, and if it was up to me, I'd probably say Microsoft was the first company that started no code, because Canva was essentially Microsoft PowerPoint. Google Sheets, AppSheet, that was Google, it was Microsoft Excel, right? And Microsoft Excel, they actually say that's the first no code tool. You use cells, put formulas, and it gives you outputs, right? It requires you not to know macros and VBA, although that was the first thing I started learning, if I'm dating myself a little bit. But that was the beginning of no code. But on the technical end, there was someone always still learning development to build the no code that we use today. So let's not think that maybe, oh, no code, I don't need to do that. But there's always still jobs and there's always still opportunities for those who know technical languages, who are building the no code tools that we use today. So this was a great moment in development history. People were chucking out softwares, because remember when you wanted Microsoft Office, you had to like go to Walmart and buy like a pack of disk and then like install it. So yeah, there was someone actually writing software to disk that we used. And then people said, well, you know, only 1/3 of 1% of the world's population are actually developers, like technical developers. That means there was a huge market of people who had no idea how to build. They had other solutions, they had needs, they needed to build things as we advanced, how we engage and use the internet. And who's gonna do the work? There's not enough people. And that's where the revolution of no code came about. So Salesforce was the first company that technically set the bar and said, here is a software that you can use in companies. You don't need to know how to code, but you can build all this data, flows, and you get all your analytics and things around a consumer relationship management tool. They consider that setting the bar and the first standard introduction to no code and its growth. But in 2006, FormStack was the first actual no-code form builder. Then, of course, Shopify in 2006, which is the largest and first no-code e-commerce platform, shook it up. People were like, what is this? And then came the iPhone. Not a no-code platform, but this was the first mobile device that introduced applications. Before that, no one considered apps in terms of short package code that allows us to expand the functionality of our devices. Before, if your phone didn't do it, it just didn't do it. But iPhone created an app store that says we got this open market where you can, if you can't code, create all these things to expand what a phone can do. The wave set off. 2012 comes along, bubble. They built the first no-code platform to build web apps. Then, around this time, Webflow says, okay, build website and web apps, but also get them to the App Store, because now there's this great opportunity with how fast iPhones and app stores were growing. And then Microsoft, who was a leading proprietor, said, hold the hell on, y'all can't just take us out the picture. So they caught up with Power Apps, Power BI, and Flow to begin to enhance the way connectivity works. Microsoft hasn't quite mastered no code, but they're really considered great in low code. Still got to know some low code, which we consider HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, to be able to make changes and use the platform. Now, I mentioned my little history here. I was actually in the no-code space long before I even knew it was a space itself. Hype Digital Innovation, I started, well, I've been obviously doing development for a while, so I already was doing the no-code thing, but I didn't formalize my company to 2017. So I was really in this Webflow and Microsoft year, so I've been in this no-code space for a very long time, but I really didn't understand the opportunity and the growth that no-code could be and would be as it is today. It's so funny, as a founder, too, has raised money, investors are like, you're late to the market. Like, I am not late. This has very, very been around for a long time. And people, if you're a developer or founder yourself, and they think, well, you're just doing this now or doing that, it's been around. We've been using no code and low code since we built MySpace pages, right? We was doing HTML templates and everything. We've been coding all along for years. It probably didn't even know it, So don't underestimate maybe your skill set or feel intimidated because of the wave of technology. We've all been in this space long before it's been the popular thing now. So today, we look at no code in 3 different segments. Productivity, this is your Canva, your Google Docs and AppSheets. It could be your HubSpot, it's your Airtable, Figma, things that help you accomplish tasks without you having to know any technical skills. You don't need to know what masking is to do things. Canva said that's what it is. We're just gonna tell you, you're gonna drop out backgrounds and make it transparent. Things like that, right? Then you have web platforms like your WordPress, your Squarespace, and Wix. You don't need to know any code. You can build things on the web. And then apps, platforms that you build mobile applications. So when we think of no code and when you're building or developing, some people actually pick a specific discipline. They say, I'm a master no code productivity tools, no code web, or no code apps. But they're all considered no code space. So when we talk about products in the market, it's really good to kind of break up what segment we like to focus on and talk about. If you can, I want everybody to close your eyes. And I want you to raise your hand if you feel less of a founder or a developer because you're using no code. Okay, you can put your hands down and open your eyes. Appreciate that honesty, and also really good to know where people sit, because I find people who feel like, I want to apply for technical jobs, I want to be a developer, I want to put myself out here, be a part of the conversation, but I don't have the schooling, or I don't even have the interest to go learn all the languages, but I do have the creativity to build. And we have founders who are trying to get investment, they want to raise, but they're like, well, I'm using no code. Like, I need to go and build something from scratch to feel innovative, to actually feel like I have something to invest in. And that's not always the case. No code solutions are always backed with capital all day, every day. There's always a new one. One just recently got acquired. Because at the end of the day, it's not so much always the tech that people are buying. One, they're buying the business model, they're buying the community. They don't really care how the infrastructure is set most of the time. And if anything, just because you're going no code doesn't mean you have to scrap the whole solution. What people find is, well, I should focus no code on MVP only. Once I feel like I hit this metric, I'm going to go scratch all that and go build it, everything, ground up, all code. Still not the way to go, because you can only do so much. Why not do 80% no code and then 20% maybe something custom? And it's still innovative. You can iterate on some of these open source no code tools that we'll talk a little bit about. But when we think about no code and low code, the way we like to articulate the tech behind it is called logic-based programming, completely cause and react. And I like to think what really makes a developer great, whether you're doing traditional development, whether you're doing no code, it is being a great logical thinker, a critical thinker. You have the ability to see something, see opportunity, and connect it together, and see where synergies lie, see where the connections are. That's what makes a good developer, whether you went traditional or no code. No code, you have a lot more options and visual things to put together. So you can facilitate the action, the next step, and the process. And we're going to work through some examples of how you can create your process of working through logic-based programming. So as a developer or founder, you're thinking, when is it appropriate for me to use no or low code tools? Most of the time, it is MVP stage. It does not really benefit to make a large investment, recruit developers, play billable hours just to prove a concept, because I guarantee you're going to learn so much information, you're going to change your mind, you're going to pivot. Same thing with companies. Like, you got to deploy something to validate. Why pull engineering teams, take time just to prove a concept? And not talking about MVP, beta, first launch, second launch, third launch, you will never stop learning about your product. So no code is really good to manipulate and make changes if you take the right strategy, which we'll talk about today. No code is appropriate for existing concepts and infrastructure. So when we say concepts and infrastructure, this is people who have an existing business, so they have processes already, or they say, hey, I've been a beautician, like it's nothing new, I just want to systemize and put together something to make a flow of my process. That's where no-code tools are really good, because we can connect your existing tech stack to communicate so that you don't have to keep logging in here, logging in there, but make everything fit together in one platform or app. Enterprise. Believe it or not, a lot of companies, SaaS companies like Canva, that's their bread and butter, SaaS. And I always tell founders and developers, if you're looking for bigger projects or people who have bigger checks to pay, enterprise companies love no code because they don't have to tap their engineering departments and engineering budgets. It encourages people in HR to deploy things internally without having tapping engineering, because quite frankly, engineering probably had the roadmap done 5 years ago. Marketing departments, product development departments. Canva is not making $1 billion valuation off our $12 pro subscriptions monthly, okay? They're selling to partnerships like Office Max and having enterprise relationships with companies who are licensing their tools. And so what's really great too, even in no code, the enterprise segment is a really appropriate place to still leverage no code. And most of the time, they already use tech stacks like no code things. Why not create things that work with what they're already using? Because they do not want to recreate the wheel and have another tool to use and deploy to customers and their employees. So technically, I feel like no code, low code can be used anytime. So let's talk about what tools we use at those moments. I like to think of the no and low code space into two segments. You're going to have foundations. This is where you're going to build upon. This is like your WordPress or your Shopify or your Bubble or your Nixcode or a Dalo. This is the foundation of where you're going to build your tech. Then we have connectors. These are the productivity tools that we're going to pick to facilitate the experience that people will have, and these are the features. I like to call them foundation and connectors. Now, when you're a developer or work with a founder or you're thinking, okay, well, what do I need? What's the foundation I need? What are the connectors I need? You're going to ask yourself a few questions. When you're thinking of the foundation platform, you're going to say, okay, how does this product need to be deployed? Mobile, iOS, Android? Do I need a web app? Is it internal, employees only? Is it going to be publicly available? Do I need to have this smart TVs? Does it need to be on watches, devices? Does it need to be on secure internet? Does it need to be on Web3 internet, because I'm going to accept crypto? Who will maintain and manage the product? Sometimes this is very overlooked, because sometimes it's not a project manager. Sometimes it's sales and marketing who have to go and implement what's been used. So it's important to consider, okay, who's going to maintain and be using this so that we're building with them in mind, that their requirements, that their needs, that the way that they work today is going to fit a little bit better so it's not another learning curve for them. What is the ideal product roadmap? Now, what is their scale plan? Do they plan to keep innovating and relaunching products? Because I want to make sure I pick a foundation that doesn't lock you into something more open source, something that you can build and customize on. And then what is the cost and forecasted usage? Of course, you want to consider their budgets, how much they want to spend, how fast they anticipate growth, because if they're putting a bunch of users on, that will drive cost up. Is it a bunch of licensing they need to do? How many user segments do they have? This is really important when choosing the best foundation to begin building upon. Now you have the connectors. Now you pick the foundation, you're gonna have 4 questions you wanna go through to build the connectors. What are the requirements? This is pretty straightforward as a dev. Do you need compliance? People need to submit forms, they need to pay, they need permissions. I wanna have multiple permission sets. I need people to be able to do signature. I need privacy. I need to do wallet integrations. All these different things. What kind of data do they plan to connect to? That's super important. About different frameworks. One, do they need to own their data, or do they just need to have data? And when they have the data, what do they intend to do with it? That way, I want to make sure that the connector I choose to use does all those things and provides it to them. What is the business model and operation plan? So sometimes we focus on product features instead of business benefit. And I tell you this, that sometimes when we're building and developing, people think as developers, they talk to us in, well, I want the tool to do X, Y, Z. When really the conversation is, I'm trying to give my users the benefit of this. I want them to leave away with this tool having these results. And truly, they should let us as a developer find the best tools that execute that benefit. And don't let non-technical or non-UX or non-people with experience say what the product should do, because technically, there's no right or wrong answer. But if they tell you, hey, I would love people to be able to pay easy with one-click ability and save their payment, like this is the experience I want them to have, the tool and how it implements, we'll take that and find the best tool that'll execute that benefit. So when you're creating, considering the business model, business benefit over product features. Open source, make sure that can they expand on it, do things, add things later. And then what kind of languages do I need to know in the case they want to expand? Sometimes some languages don't fit together. It just doesn't work. So if I know this is built on Cordova, but hey, I'm going to need to do some AI and I want to add Web3, like that foundation is not going to complement the type of open source coding I'm going to need to do or they'll need to do eventually. So it's really great to read their API docs, read their dev docs to see what kind of languages, if someone wanted to customize, do you require to know, and is this compatible with the foundation that we're going to choose? And last but not least, you want to make sure it's compatible with the foundation in terms of the integration and bringing it in. Will it resonate right, look right? Will it work and flow experience-wise? And honestly, some of these are trial and error. That's how you're going to learn. Try and get failing, and there's not always a open black and white answer. With no code, the reason why I find it to be easily adoptable and really changing and setting the lead for how development is done, because changing user behavior is really hard. And this is something I always try to encourage developers and founders to think about is when you're building a product, as much as we want to get fancy, some users got to make it easy. I try not to insult the user, but we always say like you got to make it super, super, super simple because people just don't think. They're not as intuitive we hope they would be. And so someone told me it really takes a genius to build something totally idiot-proof, and no one today has mastered building idiot-proof tools for the internet because there's always someone who still does not know it. People still struggle with Excel, PowerPoint, Canva. Even though some of us think it's super easy, there are still people who really find it complicated. So when we talk about not changing user behavior, think about the experience of a phone. If I see 3 lines in the corner, I'm always going to assume that it's going to open a side menu, right? To want to change that, remove that, say, well, I don't want 3 lines, I want a heart. It almost feels a little different. Am I favoriting that? Like, why is there a heart there, right? Is changing user behavior is hard. And as many times as maybe the person you're building for says, well, I want hearts. You have to take the lead and say that is not user behavior, and you're going to find users to not engage. As a developer, they're counting on you to also get them results and give them the business benefit and not focus on product features. So one example how I learned the power of not changing user behavior and how that ties into no code is, what I didn't mention is I also ran a paint party business called Pop Up and Paint. When I couldn't afford to build my no code software because it's costly, I started another easy business to fund it. And it was in Jackson, Michigan, called Pop Up and Paint. And I got this idea because painting with a twist, if you're familiar with it, you got the canvas, the wine, you got a canvas, you got paintbrush and stencil. It really had expert artists teach people who have never painted before how to create masterpieces by just giving them an outline and some tools. And then people were able to replicate it. And I said, well, in the development space, how do we do that? Like, how could I, as if I was a dev expert, how could I actually build something that feels familiar? Not only familiar to the person who has to use the product, so your client, but the person who's actually using the app, right? It needs to feel intuitive to them, something familiar. And one thing is when we navigate our files, right? So we've all used File Explorer or Finder, right? Yeah, we all, okay, cool. So we're familiar with that. Mostly if you open anybody's laptop and they say, go to my documents, you usually know exactly how to get there, right? It's intuitive, not changing user behavior. No one's came out with a new computer and said, you know what? We're gonna call it the, cupboard, and people are like, what is the cupboard? I don't know what that is. What's in there? Again, not changing user behavior. So when you go to My Documents, it follows a very consistent format no matter what device you use. It has documents of files and folders. Folders hold information, files are the information. So I did something for TEDx Detroit when I did this pitch and kind of walked in how easy it is to build something using this framework. So our foundation is this File Explorer or Finder, right? And then I'm gonna create a couple connectors. Well, TEDx Detroit is gonna be my main one. It is the home, it is the base. It is that first home page when you open up an app, if you will, right? It's the My Documents of the File Explorer. And that's really where speakers go. When people go to TEDx, they're looking for speakers. So that's gonna be my first connector. How do I have speaker piece? So that first folder on top of my foundation, that connector, is gonna be something to implement the speaker portion. Okay, so I'm in there. I click that connector, the speakers, now what? I need three things. I need to know the speaker's name, their picture, and I wanna hear their TED Talk. So now, when I open that, I have two more connectors. I'm gonna have the folder of two speakers. Those are gonna be, well, say Melissa and myself. Okay, now that I have the Melissa folder connector, I have Sydney. When I go in it, these are where the actual files will be, the photo and the talk, the elements that we looked at. So we go through the flow in terms of an app experience. I have that on my foundation of the Finder, and I also have the foundation of this app that was built on the platform. And that first connector piece, that home that I decided to build, is going to be where you find speakers. And when you open that folder, you see two more folders, which could be other connectors, or the same one, and it's gonna be Melissa Butler and myself. And then let's say you choose one of those, it'll then give you the files, the content. That'll be what the connector provides as the output. So when we're looking to start building a no-code, when you're choosing tools of finding the right one, you want to find, one, the foundation you want to build upon that feels most intuitive for your client, but also intuitive for whoever has to use the end product, website, app, whatever it may be, SaaS. And then you're going to choose multiple connectors, sometimes maybe one, but what are the tools that I need to be able to execute the action items? Again, here's a different visual of it, that you have this folder. Again, you have these files, and in folders could be files as well. So let's say we had a conference like this one. I would have a conference homepage if they have an app. Okay, they had the speakers, and then maybe they also in the same page have some on-demand ones that are happening live. And then in the speakers, you actually get to learn about the speakers and see their photo and information. This is the kind of sitemap that we always build and work through to start outlining requirements that we need for the clients we work for or building our ideas. I always say wireframes are really good, and we'll talk about wireframes, but when someone has an idea, or if you're on a call and trying to get someone's idea, walk through like a sitemap. Okay, say, where do we start first as a user? And what are those things that they need to see immediately? And what are the actions that will export from that? And then we'll go through a flow of finding those connectors. So let's walk through this process. First thing it is, when we talk about is building that workflow. The first thing we'll start with is what action needs to be taken as soon as someone opens the app. And then what decision do they have to make? They have to make a decision. We need to know what those decisions are. And then what happens when they have these different outputs of decisions and what it takes them to the next step, and it repeats decision, output, decision, output. Okay, you're gonna create a workflow. Once you do that, then wireframe those screens. Every element, that homepage where they took action at, draw what that looks like, where are the elements placed, how it looks, what is negotiable and what is non-negotiable. And I say that because sometimes with no code, you do find yourself a little limited with how things can look and be. So it's good to know, hey, I don't really care how this looks, or like this, we have like research and data that proves it has to look like this. So when you're doing the wireframe, it's great to use either color code or some type of legend to identify what's negotiable in the UX and what is non-negotiable. So you're going to create that home folder, that first experience, and then you'll create a next one of the action screen for each output off that screen. What's really good about when you do the flow is you'll still, when you have the screen wireframe, you'll say, okay, this action item here, the speakers, we need to use this. Oh, we need to apply to be a speaker. Okay, what are the requirements? Okay, this needs to go to a Jot form. This needs to go to a Google Sheet. This needs to do something. Oh, you need to get sponsorship and you need to connect to that marketing team. Let's see if HubSpot has a CRM tool because that's what you're using, and this will output and connect here. You'll start to take your wireframe and to map out the outputs of what no-code tools you need. And then you'll piece them together. Sometimes the tools can talk back and forth on their own, especially if they have already an integration. Some tools mostly have that. Or, Zapier would allow you to workflow and connect these experiences together in the platform, the software, the app, the website that you're developing. There are tons and tons and tons of tools out there that will allow you to know how to build a no-code. So this site that you can QR code and scan that if you want to is nocodelist.co. And it has everything segmented. If you need Web3 no-code tools, AI no-code tools, AR, VR, marketing, payments, processing for medtech, fintech, Web3, you need to do gamification. You need to do, it has a list of tons of categories. And it tells you what kind of no-code tools are actually out there for you to implement. So this is like a homepage of connectors, if you will. They also have foundations as well if you need to do app, web, or SaaS. Really great site. You can see people thumbs up, thumbs down reviews. But this site here is going to be really instrumental in finding multiple connectors and foundations to do that comparison that we talked about. Being successful with your development, with your project, I want you to take away really 3 things that we kind of hashed over. One is business benefit over product features. And when I say this, and you apply it into your role, an example of product features is saying, I really want people to have a voting system, but I don't want thumbs up, thumbs down. I want to use, pictures of Mickey Mouse. Things like that sometimes will add complications to the project. Does it really drive benefit? Is it really equated to the revenue? You will find sometimes as a developer or founder, we think about perfecting the experience and instead of focusing on the business benefit. Your goal is to get users and to get revenue. That is the only indicator of how to move your roadmap forward. Some people say, well, I'm an MVP, I'm going to validate with all this feedback, and majority of the time, they're validating feedback from people who aren't even their target customer. The people who are giving you the feedback to educate the business benefit of what you're building are the ones using your product and spending money. And the indicators are, if you've built something as a developer or you're building something for the client, the indicator you're setting up is when someone starts spending money with you, the revenue is increasing, and people are staying subscribed. You're doing something right. They're seeing value. Users are not only using it, they're staying and repeatedly using it. You're doing something right. That's the data, and that's the validation that you're looking for. You built something, and you got users who are using it, and then they stop using it. Then something is telling you you need to do something different. Then you have the indicator people are subscribing, but your churn rate of people unsubscribing is starting to increase. That's the indicator that you're doing something wrong. Right? That's the validation you need, and that's the data you need. Not surveying wrong people, but people who are actually using and spending money. Are they keeping it, or are they leaving the product? Knowing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, I believe strongly if you can just master those 3 or just enough to be dangerous, you can be able to customize and build and tweak some of these no-code tools, connectors, and foundations that you'll choose. So people would say, what languages do I need to start with? These 3 are pretty foundational, pretty standard. If you are looking to develop and actually build tools for no-code, you're looking to do more PHP, more React, Node.js. That's what Canva uses to build something like that if you're looking for like a drag and drop experience. But primarily, if you can know those 3 languages, you can have success. And then keep in mind the end game and revenue focus in mind. So when you're building things, focus on the roadmap. What is the picture that we're trying to get to? And focus on the revenue. So people sometimes say, well, I really need to focus on this consumer who's going to spend maybe less than $100 a year. versus building a product to sell for someone who's going to spend $1,000 a year, right? Focus on where the greatest demand, where the greatest value for your business growth is, and make sure it aligns with that product roadmap. At this time, I'm open to have discussion and talk any questions if there's maybe 2 minutes.